The United States and China, two of the world's top economies, are in a trade war. It didn't start in a day. The conflict has been years in the making. Both countries have hiked taxes on goods being imported from the other country. They've even blocked each other's products from entering their markets. This war of tariffs and restrictions has been ongoing on multiple fronts, from soybeans to satellite parts to high-tech products like chips. And last week, a new front opened in this trade war. This time, it was for the very backbone of the industrial economy: steel. US President Joe Biden has called for tripling tariffs on steel imported from China. Speaking in Pennsylvania, one of the US's top steel-producing states, Biden said that his administration has started an investigation against Chinese steel. He further added that import taxes on Chinese steel will be raised if they were found hurting US industries.
I promise you, and I'm not going to let that happen again. Look, right now, my U.S. Trade Representative is investigating trade practices by the Chinese government regarding steel and aluminum. If that investigation confirms these anti-competitive trade practices, then I'm calling on her to consider tripling the tariff rates for both steel imports and aluminum imports from China.
China was quick to condemn Biden's remarks. Beijing accused Washington of hypocrisy. But how did steel suddenly become a focal point for the US-China trade tensions? Let's understand. China is the world's largest steel manufacturer. The country has been producing over 1 billion tons of steel every year since 2019. In just the first quarter of 2024, China exported nearly 26 million tons of the metal. This is more than 28% of the steel it exported in the same period in 2023. And for the full year, Chinese steel companies exported a whopping 90 million tons of steel. On the flip side, the country's imports stood at 7.64 million tons. This high rate of steel exports was due to two major reasons. First, weak domestic demand. China has been going through an economic downturn for the last few years. Because of this, the demand of steel in industry has declined, and this in turn has pushed producers to sell their surplus products abroad. The second reason is the low price of Chinese steel.
But for too long, the Chinese government has poured state money into Chinese steel companies, pushing them to make so much steel as much as possible, subsidized by the Chinese government. Because Chinese steel companies produce a lot more steel than China needs, it ends up dumping extra steel into the global markets at unfairly low prices. And the prices are unfairly low because China's steel companies don't need to worry about making a profit because the Chinese government has subsidized them so heavily. They're not competing, they're cheating. And we've seen the damage here in America.
In 2007, the country became a dominant force in the steel market. It produced over 40% of global steel. This overproduction led to a surplus for the Chinese firms. They had more product than they were able to sell. And then they cut their prices sharply. This made Chinese steel cheaper and more attractive. However, it also harmed the steel producers in other countries. Steel makers around the globe were also forced to cut prices of their products, in turn making losses and shutting shop. This impacted American firms as well.
Between those years, 2000 and 2010, more than 14,000 steelworkers in Pennsylvania and Ohio lost their jobs. 14,000. Let me ask you, we're going to let that happen again?
No!
I promise you, and I'm not going to let that happen again.
As the US steel industry struggled, in 2018, then-President Donald Trump imposed a 25% import tax. This was for steel coming from foreign countries, including China. The tax was imposed under Section 232 of the US Trade Expansion Act. The section gives the US president powers to adjust import taxes if they think foreign imports are threatening America's national security. Later, Joe Biden's administration continued with the policy after coming into power. And now, Biden has warned that he will raise import duties on Chinese steel even further. The US government wants to raise import duties under a different rule. As of now, the import of Chinese steel attracts a 7.5% tax. However, Biden wants to hike the tax to over 22%. This escalation in US-China tensions comes at a crucial time. The US is gearing up for its presidential election this year, and candidates need the backing of industries and businesses. In fact, President Biden invoked the issue in a key election state, Pennsylvania, a state that has increasingly become a swing state in presidential elections. Now, steel is a key industry in Pennsylvania. At one time, it was the heartland of steel production in the US. The industry still provides thousands of jobs in the state. Even though some big names have faded, firms like Bethlehem Steel and US Steel still have production facilities in the state. However, these firms are now facing challenges. And it's not just in Pennsylvania. The steel industry is very influential in other US states as well. It provides thousands of jobs in states like Indiana, North Carolina, Texas, and California. Earlier this year, Donald Trump also vowed to hike import duties on Chinese goods. Trump said that he would increase the taxes by 60% if he's elected. As election season in the US gets into full swing, it's expected that both Biden and Trump will make more such remarks to appease the industries and gain more votes. However, China's steel overproduction isn't painful just for the US. Multiple countries have taken action against it. Last year, India imposed anti-dumping duties on some Chinese steel imports. Meanwhile, Thailand has launched a probe into Chinese steel imports. So now, amid rising scrutiny across the globe and an increasing tussle with the US, will China's steel sector lose its shine?